I'm in Toastmasters. It's as a guest,
Oh, nice. Like a
and they're like, and I forget because it's not my actual club, and I forget. I had just added it to my calendar, so now I
Gotcha.
remember it.
Gotcha.
Okay, live on YouTube now.
Sweet.
All right. So what kind of things have you been learning in the last few months?
Oh man, I feel like the whole career has changed. To be honest with you, in the last few months, I think that we're finding, as everyone finds a new normal, we're starting to, at least in our career field, we're finding a new normal as well. Working from home, and I haven't been in the newsroom in 2.5 months, so things are different. Gear breaks when I'm out on a story. I don't have a wireless mic anymore because my receiver broke. So I've been having to hardwire everything, which I haven't had to do in more than 8 years on the job. So that's been difficult. And just trying to literally, you just have the bare bones at your disposal when it comes to creating content. And that's been the most challenging thing is trying to get creative and um, looking at how can I, the way our company works, I work for a corporation called Tegna. So they don't let us do in-person interviews. And I'm like, nothing against Zoom, but I'm trying to find a way where I can still do an in-person interview, but from a safe distance. So what I've been doing a lot is having people call me, and then I just mic myself up since we can't put a microphone on them, and I just have them talk to me, through the phone, and that's seemed to work well in a lot of stories that I've done, and yeah, I mean the whole business has changed. We're taking a furlough. I have a week off next week, unpaid, and it's nothing compared to the restaurant workers and healthcare workers that are out there, the healthcare workers that are on the front lines, and the restaurant workers and service industry workers that are have been laid off without a job for last couple months, and they're barely getting by. So yeah, things have changed a lot.
Yeah, and you mentioned like I've also like 2 months ago I was going into my studio and to to not just play around, like say in the studio and all with the equipment, work, you know, with all the stuff, and now at home you're away from that, and I've seen a few things about people getting creative, and the one thing that I saw that spotted you was that one story about that coach
Yeah, did
who
the photographer with the signs and
photographer.
stuff.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
saw that, and that's what caught my attention.
yeah, that was just one of a lot of, the reason I got into this industry was to, you sent me a couple questions before this, and I was thinking about it a little bit, and I think the reason I got into this business was to serve, and not, I've served my country the last 10 years. I'm in the Air National Guard. I fly for them, And then, one thing I'd really like to clear up is we get a lot of messages from people that watch and that are fed misinformation. And one thing I'd like to tell them is, we do not have an agenda. Local news does not have an agenda. You can talk about cable news. That's a different spectrum. Fox News, CNN, they're different than CBS, ABC, NBC. And even the networks are different than the local stations. A lot of people don't realize that too. Like the company I work for, Tegna, we have different affiliates throughout the country. We have ABC, we own ABCs, we own Foxes, we own CBSs. And, one thing that I've been seeing a lot is, people messaging me saying, you have an agenda, trust me, if I don't get paid enough to have an agenda. So that's one thing I'd really like to, clear up for anybody who's watching who may think that.
All right, so I'd like to get into trying to find an opening to this, but my first few set of questions I've been like getting to ask everyone I've been talking to in the last few weeks. Just to let you know a little bit about yourself. Who are you? And it's pretty simple, just your name.
Yeah.
I already know it, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I grew up in Central Illinois, a little town called Kincaid, and then I moved to Hillsboro my sophomore year of high school, so still in Central Illinois. So grew up there, and then I went to college at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, which is in Southern Illinois, obviously, and was down there at the ABC affiliate WSIL for about 6 years, and then came to St. Louis here at KSDK. And, that's pretty much been my career so far. 8 years in the business. I've, loved a lot of it. There's been parts you don't like, but, that's pretty much me. And then part-time, I work for the Air Force. I serve in the Air National Guard. I fly for them. I do in-flight refueling. Just got back from Afghanistan in November. So done a lot with the military, and it's given me the opportunity to go see the world, and it paid for college. And I've been blessed a lot along the way. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
So what do you do? So that's you. What do you do officially?
So I'll revert back to what we were talking about earlier. I feel like I thought about it a lot, and it's serving. I love to storytell, and if I can make somebody's day better by them seeing my story or helping somebody out on a story, whether they're going through a hard time or they need they lost a job, they lost a loved one, to help them through that and tell their story, it is really something that not a lot of people that go to school for journalism actually do the job. So, that's one. And then two, to actually be doing it for this long has been really cool. And so I would say that, yeah, I serve, I try to give people the information that they need, and they can take it as they will.
So and so, sorry, I know this introduction we were talking about, this is kind of almost a repetition, but I still like to go through these questions like in the order to open. So what we just touched on what you do. Who do you do it for?
I do it for the public. I do it for the viewers, the people that watch, for both jobs. I serve my country to help protect my family, my friends, and then on the flip side of that, I storytell for to maybe inspire somebody, or, you know, if somebody can relate to me or relate to the person I'm talking about, and say, that helped me today, then, that's who I do it for.
And what is like the overall expectation of you doing this for someone? What is the overall expectation that they can expect, or maybe you can expect, that they get from it?
Yeah, I would say that what they can expect from me is transparency. I'm never gonna, I'm not gonna ask a loaded question. I'm not gonna. There's no gotcha journalism. If I come out and cover a story for you, it's gonna be a conversation, and I feel like that's the way journalism should be. No matter who you're talking to, you still have to hold people accountable. If you're talking to an elected official, yeah, you have to ask, the hard questions, but it can still be a conversation. And that's the thing that I feel like. I was talking about cable news earlier. I feel like they've gotten away from that a little bit, and I think that that is a little bit disingenuous. And I think that we just need to go back to having a conversation, a meaningful conversation where people can get the information that they need, and there's no there's no walking around the lines, there's no BS.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's you need to get the information that you need so you can think for yourselves, and quite
Right.
often that's people aren't thinking for themselves right now.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, who am I to tell you? Like, I'm not going to sit there and give you my opinion. My opinion doesn't matter. I'm going to give you the information that you can use to form your own opinion. I shouldn't be sitting up there on a desk, or in the field, telling you what I think about something, because what I think and what you think may be two completely different things, and that's okay. And that's the thing that I think our country doesn't understand right now, is that it seems like if somebody's got one opinion and somebody else has another, that wow, we can't talk anymore. Why? It's totally okay to have two different opinions on something, but what we do and what I try to do is let people form their own, and just because yours is different from mine doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make me wrong.
So, and again, I think you stated, but I'd like to go into being grateful. Like, one thing you're grateful for, maybe inside industry, or
I'd say the biggest thing that I'm grateful for is, and I'll just talk about the organization I work for now. A lot of my bosses give me a lot of creative freedom. There's not a lot of hand holding, which I really like. And I'm pretty much given, here's your assignment. I'll go pitch a story idea, or they'll tell me what to go cover, but they don't tell me how to cover it. And I really like that. The fact that I get creative freedom on how I want to tell that story is really nice. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about the organization that I work for.
When did you realize that you wanted to do this? Was it when you got started, or did you go to school for it?
Yeah, I did go to school for it. Originally, I wanted to be a visual storyteller. I didn't necessarily want to be in front of the camera. and that's what I started out doing. I started off as a morning show photographer, so I ran the live truck. Set up, if you ever drove by a news vehicle, you see the mast raised on the live truck, and that's basically what I did for about a year and a half in my senior year of college. And then I was like, hey, I kind of like the storytelling thing, when it comes to writing. So then I started writing some of my own stuff, and then I ended up, well, I mean, if I'm going to write it, I might as well present it. So now I'm what they call what Tegna calls a multi-skilled journalist. So I go out, I shoot all my own stuff most of the time, write it, edit it, voice it, and then present it on air. So but to tell you when I knew I wanted to do it was I always wanted to be a sports center anchor when I was little, so probably 11 or 12, I was sitting in front of the TV watching ESPN, watching Stuart Scott, Kenny Mayne, watching them on there. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that one day. Life's taken me a little bit of a different direction, but that's fine. Yeah, I'm still young. There still might be a possibility. Anybody ESPN's watching, give me a call.
That's what part of this is. That's what this part of it is for, is to open the connections, making connections. Right. I was in the same boat. I still am for the most part. I don't really see myself in front of the camera. I'm behind the camera kind of guy. But after me joining Toastmasters, I've actually introduced the idea of me actually speaking in public, which a lot of people have this terrified, and Toastmasters is a great organization that can do that for you. But because of that and what other stuff I've been doing, like I've been potentially seeing myself as, hey, I wouldn't choose to like do this as a main thing, but I wouldn't turn down if any time if I have something to offer first. But if I did and they'd come to me and say, you want to speak, I wouldn't turn that down now. Like I just probably gave him one of my best speeches just yesterday, this last 2 weeks.
And how'd you get into it? How'd you get into the storytelling industry?
And I was in college, and funny enough, I was showing interest in acting. I was taking acting classes in high school, drama class in high school, and one other time in college. So I really loved the acting thing. I even, there's this one project where we had to take a script from a TV show, like memorize it and act it out in such a way. I chose a Friends episode scene from Friends, and another time in college, and that somehow led me away from that into when I was, and all that time was in my going through a 2-year degree at local community college. When I went and I got accepted in Sam Houston State, and the big alumni in that department was it graduated in I think 1955. Dan Rather. It's named after Dan Rather, the Dan Rather Communication Building. That's where I started schooling for my communication studies.
That's awesome.
And it all started when I was in this class at Sam Houston State, and we're producing a 30-minute magazine show for our class. And I was actually a floor director down on the set, and all of a sudden our professor came over. They had said, anyone want to direct? I guess the director, who at the time, the technical director, they wanted to back out. So he was asking if anyone else. I I volunteered myself, and I actually found I love directing. By getting into that, I got into directing the school local newscast that we produced for Huntsville, Texas, and I got into that big time too.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, we had something similar at my college, the student run newscast that aired on PBS. I think we had a total of maybe 5 viewers, but it was fun, and you can probably still find some videos of me trying to do weather on there, and it's cringeworthy, if you YouTube it. But man, it was fun, and that's the thing, anybody that wants to do this, or anybody that wants to get into the filmmaking business, whether it's in front of the screen, behind the screen, you can't, and this, I mean, you're going to fail, every person that's ever been great at something has failed before, so don't let just getting into it, kill your dream, or stifle your confidence in anything. If you want to do something, you can do it. And that's what I learned when I first, I remember it was like a 8-foot by 10-foot cardboard, green piece of wall in the SIU communications building, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I suck at this. Like, what am I doing? Like, I am nobody's gonna hire me. I felt worse than who's that guy that boom goes the dynamite. Like, I felt worse than that. I was like, oh man. I was like, I make him look good, And so, but yeah, you overcome it, and you get comfortable with it, and the biggest thing is just be you. And that doesn't apply to just the film world. That applies to life in general. Just be yourself, and I feel like good things will come your way as long as you're true to yourself and you're true to other people.
And that's what led to that last speech I just talked about a minute ago too. Like, it took me literally one day to put the speech together with the presentations and the slides, but it was actually like stuff that I was been thinking while being in quarantine. I was like, what am I learning during quarantine? I wrote it down, and I used that in my slides too, and that was being me in my speech, and it was the easiest speech I've given, and apparently it was the best speech I was given. So being yourself, it's that. And I've always heard it, but that until that time when I actually talked about that, it's that's what being authentic really means.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's, and people can tell, if you're putting up a front, like, people know. I can't tell you how many times I've been out I've met, I won't name any names, but certain politicians and things like that, and some of them I'm like, okay. The thing about that is, like, interviewing politicians, they always have the guard up, They're ready for. I don't think that I've met one politician that has actually, maybe a couple senators, but I don't think I've met one politician who has actually let their guard down and had an actual conversation on camera, maybe off camera, but that's what I think. That's what I think this country needs, is just whether you're in a position of power, whether you're not, just be yourself, and have a conversation with people. Like, I'll go to the grocery store even wearing a mask. I walk into the grocery store, I'll still have a conversation with people. Everybody's got a story, And that's the best part about doing this business is you get to tell a lot of people's stories, and it's really cool. So I'll never miss an opportunity to talk to somebody, say, hey, how's your day going? And then if that, like that leads to something, we start talking. I'm like, oh, hey, wow. Like, you got a really, really interesting story here. Can I give you a call? Like, and that's how honestly, how a lot of my stories come about.
Yeah. And one thing and probably should say this, like we had a interesting situation with our audience. Our school was literally, you could see it next to, if you ever heard of the Walls unit in Huntsville, they call Texas, one of the things, prison country. My
Yeah.
school was right next to a prison who was and the inmates in there were, and they do watch, like, confirm that they do watch our channel.
Yeah.
So we had to, like, it was almost like an unsafe thing could be, and we had to worry about inmate prison breaks. We had to worry about. I think there was one though in my time of going there. There's just one prison break.
Yeah, both my dad and so my mom was a lieutenant at a prison, and my dad was also a correctional officer. They both did 20-something years, retired from Illinois State prisons. And I always joke with everybody, yeah, my mom and dad were both in jail because, I mean, they were in jail, most of the time. I was growing up working there, obviously, but it gave me a lot of perspective on life. And, a lot of people fall after their parents. And I was like, one thing I want to do is definitely not be a prison guard. But I respect anybody that has that profession. I was just like, no, not for me,
So yeah, and we had that audience, and so maybe that one time in my life, and I mean, probably not such a good time, but to be actually authentic with yourself, because it would actually be a little unsafe. But as you mentioned, it is important to fail, and I like my company. I've been with the Fox RSNs for almost 10 years now, though, the whole way through, mostly freelance. I actually just got on full time with, and we just got bought by Sinclair. And the whole, if you ever heard of the Fox Disney deal, Fox sold to Disney and Disney had to divest. So they divested and Sinclair bought. So now we're Sinclair Broadcast Group.
Yeah.
Who's been, I know a similar, it's a similar company to Tegna.
Yeah.
I know that. They own a bunch of local stations and now they just got into the cable. And I like what one people I work with, with the going back to the you need to fail. He likes to give the people who work for him the opportunity to fail. I like you got to, and that's the thing. Anyone who is in a leadership position of leadership, they need to give the people who work under them the opportunity to fail in safe way, to allow them to where it doesn't hurt them too much. But they just,
well, and I've got the perfect example was when I was making the transition from photographer to reporter, or whatever. There's so many different titles now that but when I was making the transition from behind the camera to in front of the camera, my first live shot, I remember I was just I thought I had prepared, like you think you can prepare so much to where it's like you're like, yeah, I got it, no problem. And then as soon as I went on air, my brain just just blanked. And I'm sitting there in front of the camera and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, I hope there's not a clip of it anywhere. But I remember I got back and my news director was like, what happened? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know. I blanked. And he's like, okay. And he gave me an opportunity the next day. From then on, it was fine, but there was that one time I was like, I promise you this is not going to happen again, and even when I got here, I had 6 years in the business and I got hired as a morning show reporter when I initially got to St. Louis. And I remember we have these things called headlines in the morning that it's basically just a 5-second, here's what's coming up. Boom. Like you give them one sentence and then, you're back in a minute and a half with your live shot. And the funny thing was I had never been a morning show reporter before, so I didn't know what headlines were. And I just heard that, you have your IFB in your ear and the producer's talking to you and they just said, go. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started doing my whole live shot and it was supposed to be a headline. And so I hear like music playing and they're in my ear. They're like rap, rap, rap. And I'm like, that can't be for me. They're not talking to me. And yeah, they were. So I went like 45 seconds, and did a whole live shot in what was supposed to be a, one sentence tease for a headline. And looking back on it, it's comical, but that's talking about failing. You can look back on it now and laugh, and that's the way a lot of it is. When you fail, you can look back on it and say, wow, that's where I started at, right? And then now here's where I'm at now.
And that may be the one single greatest thing when you're talking about failure. It's not just failing and how it's overcoming when you overcome it. Like if something happens during a live shoot or an on-air broadcast and the ability to work through it, and to continue to act as if nothing's happening. Like you
right.
Act as if it's going as smooth as you planned it could be.
Yeah, I remember there was this back in my old market, probably about 4 years ago, and there's this guy that came up to me. I was covering, I think it was a school board meeting it was a school board meeting at a community college, and it was John A. Logan Community College in Southern Illinois. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting there covering it, and I was probably about 20 seconds into my live shot, and this guy comes up while I'm on air. He's completely oblivious to the fact that we were live at the point, and I had done a live shot the hour prior, and so he found out about the meeting, by watching the news. And he comes up and he goes, "Hey, is this where the school board meeting's at?" And I'm like, and I was mid sentence, mid thought, and I turned to him and I was like, "Hey, sorry guys," and I was like, "Yeah, hey, it's down the hall. You're gonna make a left, and it's first door on your right." And so I told him directions. I was like, "Sorry about that. Get back to the broadcast." And it's fine. People understand that. What you don't want to do is, just sit there and and freak out and say, oh my gosh, like the whole shot's ruined. Just you got to go with the flow a lot of times.
Yeah, a lot of it. And we going to back to the authentic thing. A lot of that shows in your reactions. Like, it sounds like you handled that one situation pretty good, actually. Like, and you showed people who you did that that way. Was that live?
Yeah, it was live. Yeah.
So you showed them. Oh, you reacted to this guy's just stepping into your live shot, and he initiated a conversation, didn't know you were live, but you just proceeded anyway for that 5 seconds, and you let people know, hey, you're open to different normals.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's the big thing, I want to be. I feel like I'm approachable. you know, I don't, just because um, just because I'm on TV doesn't make me different. You know, like I'm still a person. You know, I still go out and do all the things like, you know, and even, you know, the people that are in the movies, they're still people too. You know, it's not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people think that, oh man, you're on TV, you make a lot of, no. One, we don't make a lot of money. If I was in this for the money, trust me,
We'd be really disappointed.
yeah, I'm definitely not in it for the money. I could probably go. Anyway, I don't want to make anybody in
It's
my
just
company
like
mad,
teachers.
yeah,
It's just like teachers too. Like they deserve a lot more respect than they're getting too.
oh no, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's just funny, you know, because people think that, you know, there's some aura about TV. I'm like, no, I'm on a local station in St. Louis. Like, not a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, the you know the bank manager down the street probably makes more money than I do. You know, so I do it because I love it, and I think I think it's really should be another branch of government, to be honest with you, because we're able to provide another check and balance to elected officials, and we're able to call people on stuff that, you know, otherwise might not be addressed.
I like to I like to ask everyone I talk to now some tactics, not just if you're in film or industry, for anyone, but it's more about adjusting and and really changing. Three tactics that people are so afraid of change. Sometimes they're afraid of anything new because it's not familiar. It's not. What are three tactics that you think people can take to be able to see change as something that works for them?
Are you talking strictly in the? You said not necessarily in the industry, but
I mean, it can be related to news and film. Three tactics that you take personally.
my thing is, you know, the biggest thing I really say it's just one for me, to be honest with you. It's don't try to plan too much, you know, because I remember when I first started this job, you know, I had to set up, I had to get the perfect shot. I had to, you know, make sure my camera was level. I had to, and I'm saying stuff that a lot of chief photographers are probably cringing at right now. But what works for me is, you know, like when I'm out on a story, I'm gonna set up in one spot, I'm gonna shoot, and then I'm gonna move. Like after I get a shot there, I'm gonna move, and you know, I could probably shoot a story if I had to in, you know, 10-15 minutes. But the thing I see a lot of people struggle with, and I even struggled with when I first started, was, you know, I'd come back with, you know, 60 minutes of video, and it all looked the same. So when you're telling a story, it's just be able to adapt. And you know, we have this sign in our building that it says, I'm gonna have to paraphrase it. I don't know the exact quote, but stories are about people. People have faces. Shoot more faces, right? So capturing emotion, you know, knowing when, you know, when to go away from. So like if for example, if I'm covering a city council meeting, right? Um, I might listen to the press conference, but I'm gonna go while everybody's there. If I hear two sound bites, right, in an hour-long press conference, and I've already got, if I'm not required to stay there, I'm gonna go around the corner and talk to the security guard. I'm gonna go somewhere else and try to make the story different. And because that's a lot of times where you find the best stuff is when you're, when you just kind of go off script and try to find the stuff that other people don't think about, I guess.
Yeah, you move around, you see different point of views, different perspectives. You can write out a script. I'm going to capture this. I'm going to capture this emotion, this story, but something may come up that you could not even have dreamed about, and it's a way better approach to capturing an emotion.
Yeah, like I remember, I'll share one example with you. I remember there was one time, it was about 3 or 4 years ago. It was on the 4th of July, and it's still one of probably the best stories I've ever told. There's this guy I was in Southern Illinois at the time, and I had 2 stories fall through. And back at that point, I had to do 2 different stories in one day by myself. And so, I was supposed to go to some festival, and it didn't start until 5, 6 o'clock. I'm like, there's nothing here. Like you're gonna get maybe a 30-second piece, but it's not it's not anything that I need to be in the field for, because there's just nothing here. I can send you some video back. So I was really struggling. There was so I was like, okay. Driving around in the middle of nowhere, Southern Illinois, and I come across this sign that says America. And it used to be a town. And at this point, it was still unincorporated. So it didn't technically belong to, any town or anything, but there's still a sign that said America. And I was like, okay. So I shot that. I'm like, this is my story. I'm gonna make it a story somehow. And as I'm going down the road, there's 3 people that live on the street that used to be the town, right? There's an old post office that has since been closed down. And I pull up to this trailer, and there's an old guy there sitting there on his lawnmower, right? So I walk up there and I start talking to him, and turns out he's a Vietnam veteran who has lived in America, for his whole life. And I sat there, talked to him for 10, 15 minutes, got some shots of him mowing the lawn, got some shots of him playing with the dog, and it turned out to be a great story. I basically just told the guy's life story about him living in America, serving in Vietnam, and it was the 4th of July. So it turned out to be probably one of the best stories I ever told. And all I did was pull in a guy's driveway, from seeing a sign on the highway.
Yeah, I start thinking about wrapping up so I can make the other meeting, but when we at the top, when we first started talking, when we started recording anyway, that we were saying Zoom, with everyone going to Zoom right now, and we have to be like separated, distanced, but and maybe this is more for a good pre-interview type thing, but I've noticed, and I'm I'll get your thoughts on that too, but like I've noticed with the Zoom people, like me and my speech story, it's getting more people to open up. We're connecting more with the Zoom, so it may be a good pre-interview. I know you still like to go find a way to shoot actually out, even if you have to like keep your distance a little bit. But would you say Zoom is more of a.
No, you can. I think you can get creative with Zoom too. I think I've used Zoom for a lot of stories. My buddy, he's a photographer. They do Zoom interviews all the time. I think what scares me is we found that we can do it this way, right? We've especially in the news industry, right? We found that we can do it cheaper. We found that we can do it with less people, and we found that we can do the job with nobody in the building, right? We've adapted and done all that. I'm not trying to be negative about it, but it does worry me that when we go back to whatever the normal is going to be, that things might be different, and we might, you might look at trimming some positions or so that does worry me, like being able to do this job from home
and that's issue any companies.
Yeah,
it's opening people's eyes up how things can be done, like you said, cheaper.
Yeah,
less people. Like it's not really it's probably a good thing for me, because this is what I've been doing. I've been working remote for pretty much 10 years. A lot of it we were still in the office, but we were working on some remote site,
right,
where we did all our work. And now to you don't actually have to be in an office, and people are, it's companies all over. It'll be definitely interesting. And people may have some concerns about, like, am I going to be needed?
I don't think we're going to be back to, quote unquote normal for a while. And that's okay. If you look at, take 9/11, for example, right? Everything changed after that, when it come to airports security, like, we started living in a different world. Was it better or worse? I mean, no, it's just different, and I think that's probably what's going to happen with this as well. We're just going to find a way to adapt and learn how to live in a new normal.
Yeah, definitely would say it's a 9/11 type moment. And you think you can pinpoint a specific day for this? Or, because I know this is not like 9/11 was one day.
Right. Yeah, you can't. I mean, people can speculate all they want as to where, how this happened, but that's all it's ever going to be is speculation until they find some sort of scientific proof of, or forensic proof of where this actually came from. But yeah, I mean, there's and I'm sure you've seen it. There's been a lot of speculation, but
maybe for me, there's a personal, I know it was happening well before, but for me, the day that there is actual day for me, and it's just maybe just me too, but back on March 11th, and working in sports, that's when the sports world just closed. So that's that's that moment for me, like a 9/11 moment. Like, where were you? It was like I was in the office in the studio, looking to cover some games, and then everything just stopped.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And the worst part about it is they're losing billions of dollars, and I'm going stir crazy. Thank God The Last Dance came out, because I don't know what I'd do. I mean, I've been sitting here watching. I'm a huge Cardinal fan, and I've been we've been watching reruns of, the 2011 World Series, 2006 World Series, Albert Pujols highlights. I'm like, I need some sort of, I don't care if they come back and they play without fans in the stands. Probably what's going to happen, but like it needs to happen because I feel a lot of people are going crazy.
Yeah, and that is, and there's plus for, we talked about the negatives, but there's pluses. Like, one, the boom of interest is big for anything to come back. And when it comes back, it's going to be a huge boom of interest, probably a spark in views for a little bit. But
what I'm worried about though is attendance and ticket sales, because you got to think about the people that have been laid off or have lost their jobs, who, the last thing they're thinking about is buying a ticket to a sports game, right? So are you gonna, when it comes back, like, are as many people going to be able to afford to go to a sporting event? Are they going to have to lower ticket prices? I mean, there's a lot of things you got to think about.
And I think that's part of the challenge and opportunity for us. Our teams we cover, they're going to be looking for ways to make up some of that.
Right.
Maybe not all, but some of the revenue that they're getting from ticket sales, from concession stands, from their, and look at ways that they can utilize the digital platforms a little better for second screen chances, to have something, you have a game on and you have a second chance, anything to create a similar approach or as similar as possible to being at a game. But anyway, I mean, there's a bunch of ideas floating around, like how to create an in-game approach at home while watching the game, and to make our teams and advertisers and sponsors happy in the meantime doing it too.
Right.
So there's, I'm our GM of the network, and I share the same thing. I'm excited for that reason, that there's a lot of opportunity there.
For sure, man. Well, it's been a pleasure, dude.
I'd like to end one thing with, why do you think the film news industry are important today?
I think it's more important than ever, because you have a lot of, I'll go back to it. I kind of touched on it earlier, but just to sum it up, I think there's a lot of misinformation going around, and people need to be aware of what sources they're looking at and where they're getting their information, because there's a lot of, I hate to use the term fake news, but there is a lot of fake news out there. So you just have to be diligent about where you get your information, and get it from your local news, get it from places that are reputable. If it you've never heard of a website before and there's some crazy headline, it's probably not true. So just be mindful of that. And I think that's why we're more important than ever, because we, especially local news, we bring important information to a population that we concentrate in on one population, and that's why we're important.
Yeah, I like to, maybe fake news is the easy way to portray it, but I like to say,
I hate that term.
It's unconfirmed news. Right. I like to say unconfirmed.
Yeah.
Yep. But this has been fun, and where can people most find you, real quick? I can put up a link in the notes too.
So if you just search Brandon Merano KSDK on Facebook, it's Merano, or at Brandon_Merano on Twitter, and also on Instagram. So
this was a great talk, and I hope you all the best as you figure out this this new way to work in this
Yes,
new
sir.
world.
Good talking to you, man.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Have a good one, brother.
All right.